Welcome to Breaking the Cycle of Poverty, featuring Jay Height, Executive Director of Shepherd Community Center in Indianapolis. My name is Tim Swearens, and I'm your host for these conversations that explore why poverty remains such a persistent problem in the United States. On this episode, Jay and Clarence Carter, Commissioner of Tennessee's Department of Human Services, discuss the working relationship between government and nonprofit organizations, including ministries such as Shepherd. Jay, will you introduce Clarence to our listeners?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'll introduce him to it as a very dear friend and someone I respect greatly, who has operated at every level of government as it relates to the safety net. He has run TANF for the feds, SNAP for the feds. He's now running all human services there in Tennessee, has done that now, I think, 3 different states. He's done it for Washington, D.C. as a city. I think for me, what it is Clarence has the view of the safety net that very few folks do. And I think he would say there's problems, but chucking it isn't the answer. Clarence, tell us, in your years of experience, you wrote this book, Our Net Has Holes in It. What do you mean by that title?
Jay and Tim, first of all, a pleasure to be here with you gentlemen and your audience. And what I was positing in Our Net Has Holes in It is, in 33 years of administration of public safety net programs at the federal, state, and local level of government, have come to understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of our systems of public support. And I would say the headline is, our safety net is something, it is a mechanism of our society that is vitally important, full stop, new paragraph. It is woefully flawed in its design and execution. And Our Net shares what's wrong with the design and operation, and then shares a vision for how we can transform that safety net to meet our societal intentions.
Clarence, what Shepherd's vision, mission is to help our neighbors break the cycle of poverty. Government provides a safety net, a necessary safety net, but often struggles to help people lift themselves out of poverty. How do the two, like a nonprofit like Shepherd and government, work together to help families move from A to B to C?
So it has to begin with intention. And if I could explain, where we begin with Our Net Has Holes in It is that this nation is the most generous and benevolent nation known to humankind. And we lay out several different dimensions of the argument to prove that fact about the generosity of this nation. And one of the facts that we lay out is the amount of spending that we do in America, that government expends to serve the vulnerable in our society. And the truth is, collectively, the government alone, and this has nothing to do with any other sector of our society, our federal government alone spends every year $1.49 trillion in programs to serve those that are vulnerable. So we spend enough, okay? And we also showcase in our net that we have more than 100, in fact, 114 means tested programs that were designed to serve our most vulnerable. And so my base argument is it's not an issue of our caring enough. It's not an issue of our not spending enough. It is an issue of design and operation. And so I dial back to it has to begin with our intention. And I would argue that currently it is not the intention of the American safety net to lift the consumers that need the support of the safety net, to lift them beyond the need for it. It is basically the intention to serve them while they meet the criterion to be served in it. And so my argument is if we begin with the intention that it is our goal to, as we serve, to lift, and that we augment the way that we currently measure to measuring whether or not we are lifting people beyond the vulnerability, then we would have a very different result. Currently, the way I get measured as a human services program administrator, I get measured by the units of service that I deliver. I get measured by how much I spend. Okay. I don't get measured by whether or not anybody got better, got healthier, got less dependent for the intervention of our programs. And so it's my argument, if we change that intention and we begin with the end in mind, and the end in mind has to be that someday in the not too distant future, that consumer can turn around and say thanks, but no thanks. Because what we've done together has helped them address the issues that had them in need of the safety net. So we have to begin with a shared vision of lifting people beyond, and then our architecture and all of our rules and intentions have to support that lifting our consumer beyond.
Clarence, one time with you, we heard that woman share, everyone keeps me from drowning, but no one's teaching me how to swim. And so I've heard you say it many times, and we use this phrase here at Shepherd, grow your capacity to reduce dependency. And I believe if we really want to have a safety net, it is a trampoline. It's going to catapult you on, not suck you in and hold you.
Jay, as you and I have been joined at the hip now for I think the last 8 years in this pursuit, we've talked about this many times, and I want to revert back to again the premise that undergirds the book. Our net has holes in it. In the introduction, I referred to an instance when I was 8 years old. My mother took my brothers and I to the Ringling Brothers Barnum Bailey Circus. And we were absolutely fascinated by the things that were going on in the 3 different rings. You know, you have the animals that are doing tricks, and you've got jugglers and clowns and guys on stilts, and it was amazing. But later in the performance, the lighting directed our eyes to the top of the arena. And there were people up there They were so high up, they were almost microscopic in size. And they were doing some amazing things, like, walking and tumbling across a tightrope and on a trapeze and swinging and that sort. And it was really exciting and exhilarating. But at the same time, I was frightened. And I asked my mom, I said, Mom, what happens if somebody falls? And she redirected my sight line to underneath the performers where there was this net. And she said to me, honey, that's a safety net. And if someone falls, then it will catch them and keep them from hurting themselves. Well, almost as if on cue, one of the performers fell, bounced into the safety net several times, steadied themselves, moved over to a ladder, and climbed back into the performance. And I say, little did I realize at 8 years old that I had had a glimpse into my future. I said, but what would happen if that net had holes in it that didn't break the fall of that performer? And I said, our safety net has those kinds of holes in it that in many instances it doesn't catch the consumers who are the life performers, if you would. And so we have to repair those holes. So it does act, Jay, as you said, as more of a trampoline and not a hammock.
I'm curious on the backstory. You mentioned that you've been interacting with this guy on the Near East Side of Indianapolis for 8 years. How did you intersect with Mr. Height?
Tom, a mutual friend and colleague, when they heard this rant from me, and they had had an ongoing relationship with Jay and Shepard, and said, the two of you need to meet, okay? Because what I feel like I'm hearing the same thing from both of you. And so George put us together. I had the opportunity to come to Indy, and I guess this is 8 years ago. And we sat in Jay's conference room, and I would say it was almost like a tennis match where we would just hit back and forth volleys across the table with all of the different elements of this discussion. And Jay shared with me the work that Shepard has done for years in serving that vulnerable community in Indy. And I was able to see firsthand how what Shepard was doing, it was a practical application of the things that I had been developing thought-wise for years. And so while in the position that I was in, and this is one of my stints in the federal government, much of what I could do was really theoretical. I was able to see what Jay was doing was very practical. And so over the course of those 8 years, we have been working to blend together the theory with the practice and really come to be of one mind for the problems with the safety net, a vision for addressing those problems, and then the practical application of how to get it done. Is that fair, Jay?
Yes, and I highly recommend for folks who want to do a deeper dive, Clarence Carter, Our Net Has Holes in It. It's a great read that gives the glimpse of someone from the inside who doesn't say we need to eliminate the safety net because there are some who will always need it. But we can improve it to help those grow their capacity to reduce dependency. We can teach people how to swim.
Clarence, you're leading a state department agency, of course. Jay, you're leading a ministry. How do those two sectors complement each other and come together to support people in need?
Well, the first thing is that the government has got to get over its own arrogance in the belief that it's the principal problem solver. And what has happened in our society over the course of the past 60 or so years, as the role of government in this work of addressing the human condition, as that has grown and evolved, it has crowded out other sectors of our society from being a part of the problem solving. And so the first thing is government has to invite, it has to ask the rest of the community to help be part of solving this problem. I think it was President Reagan that said the 9 most dangerous words in the English lexicon are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
Yes.
Okay. And so the first thing that has to happen is government has to say, this problem is all of our problem. Okay. And so, what can all of us do to be able to build an America that lifts the vulnerable beyond their vulnerability? And again, you know, is intentional about growing capacity to reduce dependency. And so the interesting thing is, and this is for me is particularly in the area of the community of faith and government relation. Okay. What government can do relatively well is transaction. And what I mean by that is, let's take a SNAP benefit, more formally known as food stamps. Okay, it is a transaction to get the determination of whether or not that consumer is eligible to receive that benefit and in what amount, and then get that to them. That is a transaction. Okay, and government is relatively good at that. What government isn't in the business of and is very poor at is relationship. And and those that need the help of the system of public supports need both transaction and relationship blended together to achieve that growing capacity to reduce dependency. Well, the community of faith traffics in relationship. Okay. And so the idea of blending those two strengths, okay, blending and enabling those two strengths to come together and work for a common purpose, that's exactly how we can, again, bring everybody together to solve this problem, because each sector of our society has a strength to bring to this work. Again, if we will only invite it in and align and leverage all of these supports together.
Jay, on the ministry side, there has to be a willingness among ministry leaders to work with government. I know you've done that. Others at Shepherd have done that to a very high level. What would you say to ministry leaders to say, you can do this. You can partner with government.
We all need to be at the table. And we do a disservice when government says you don't need me, and I do a disservice when I say we don't need government. it's together. We see this modeled in Nehemiah. When Nehemiah went to the king and said, I need a transaction, I need resources, and then I'll go do the work, but I need the transaction. And so, by the way, Nehemiah didn't even ask for enough. He didn't have enough faith to ask the king. King gave him more than what he asked for. We operate together. And there are not-for-profits, there's faith-based groups. We all come to collectively together, but the recession that we are dealing with, the crisis of our city, of our communities, of the neighborhood, is a friendship recession. Government is not created to create relationships. The church, the neighbors, this is both the church's call, but it's an individual call. It's Jay Height and Jane Height saying, I've got to take care of my neighbors. America's greatness came when we collectively came together and said, yes, let's do something, and let's do it together. And I think that's where we've lost it. The tragedy of the war on poverty is not the outcomes, but it's because I believe the church said, okay, government, you take it over. It's your responsibility. I think individuals said it's the government's responsibility, and that's never what it was created for. And I think we've given up our God-given responsibilities.
Tim and Jay, what's very interesting is, and we refer to this in the book, Arnett has holes in it. What you see in America is any time that there is some kind of tragedy or calamity, everybody runs to help and brings whatever it is they have. They might bring a shovel or a truck or a sandwich or a dollar or a smile, but we collectively descend on whatever that calamity is, and it is the community that addresses that. And that is exactly the kind of approach that Jay's talking about that we need to take to this issue of addressing the vulnerability of those in our society. Okay. But again, instead of, as the size and scope of government has grown, it's crowded out those other sectors and not ask for the help that it desperately needs. I say in the final chapter of the book, this problem of the human condition is not bigger than all of us. It's bigger than any one program or any one agency or any one funding stream, but it isn't bigger than the collective all of us. And that's what we have a prescription for in the book is, how can we transform our model so that we have this shared vision of this growing capacity to reduce dependency, and then realign the architecture of this society to achieve that objective. And that architecture includes everybody.
Listening to Clarence talk about the community coming together during a crisis, I was reminded of that old political phrase of, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And we saw an example of that last fall during the federal government shutdown, when there were a lot of concerns that SNAP benefits would run out, and we would have neighbors in great need. And we saw people in the community, organizations in the community, churches, really step forward in a big way. The shutdown ended, and we kind of pulled back. But maybe we need to be leaning in when there's not a crisis.
Yeah, I think it's that day-to-day that it may not be covered by the news, but it is still that crisis. And I think as you get to know your neighbors, you find out their hurts and their pains, and we don't do a service to them if we say, hey, yeah, go down the street to this government agency and sign up for it. If they need it, let me go with you down to sign up. And I talk to you and say, okay, Tim, what else can I do to help you? I encourage everyone to get the book, read it. Arnett has holes in it. Clarence Carter, my good friend, thank you. I know you've got lots of stuff to do there in Tennessee, and we've got lots of stuff to do here in the Near East Side. Together, collectively, we can make a difference. And so thank you for your years of service and for your encouragement to us as the church, as the faith community, to step up.
Jay and Tim, thank you so much for the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you guys and your audience. And Jay, we will continue our arms locked in trying to build the next generation of a safety net that truly strengthens America by strengthening Americans. My pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you, Clarence and Jay. For 41 years, Shepherd Community has made a lasting difference in the lives of thousands and thousands of neighbors. The Shepherd team couldn't do that work without the support of donors, partners, and volunteers. To learn more about how you can help, please visit shepherdcommunity.org. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thanks, Clarence.